Welcome to Options live stream. This is Beyond the Greeks, where we explore a series of research in DeFi options and Uniswap LPing. Today we have Guillaume Lambert. He is the founder and CEO of Panoptic, and we're excited to have him be talking about a very dear to heart topic for many LPs, which they have been asking for years: how to hedge their positions. So we'll be covering a lot about how you can be protected, avoid impermanent loss, stay delta neutral, and yeah, very cool strategy, delta neutral LPing that has been taking off recently. So we'll learn about some different Uniswap positions and how you can hedge them. So we're excited to have you. How are you doing today, Guillaume?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So this is Brandon is the host today. Typically, I'm the one introducing, but this is based off of an article that we published. And again, Brandon was the author as well. I just wanted to have like a video format, if that makes sense, and go through some of the features of the Panoptic interface that would kind of make it so that you can actually hedge your Uniswap position. The transferring the text format in that blog post to something a bit more visual. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's going to be repackaged in a way that people can watch afterwards. But yeah, for now, we'll just kind of go through the steps. How I think about hedging my own LP positions, how I think about managing risk, whether it's on Uniswap or Panoptic, just the whole process. Again, you can hear from me directly.
Wonderful. Well, you'll get to see it live. And if you have questions during this tutorial, please leave it in the Twitter or YouTube comments where we're streaming here live. And yeah, to start out with, what do we even mean by hedge, Guillaume?
Yeah, no, the hedging, the H word. When you talk about hedging, it's mostly for reducing risks. But when you have banks, hedge funds, any institution that is to some extent exposed to the markets, they don't want to be kind of caught off guard if there's a big price move, if the interest rate changes, if you're a farmer or you're an airline and the cost of oil or corn increases. You need a hedge. You need a way to kind of offset some of that future uncertainty by doing a trade or setting up a position that kind of gives you peace of mind in a way. And if you're talking about Uniswap positions, impermanent loss is what you want to avoid. Maybe this is kind of the risk is, will I be stuck with either a depreciating asset, or would I make less money that if I did maybe nothing at all? And that hedge is also meant to give you some peace of mind. Now, you don't know what the future is going to hold, but you have one trade that will neutralize the risks the best you can. And then you kind of now have a much stronger position and sleep more soundly because you're less exposed.
Well, that sounds good with me. Why don't you show us how one can start with this hedge if you want to walk us through the process and tutorial here?
Yes, exactly. And then we have these fancy special effects here. Maybe it's going to be in 4 phases. Ooh, 4 phases. Step 1, step 2, step 4. When you have a Uniswap position specifically, we go through these 4 phases, which is understand what you're trading, know your delta exposure, but your creek, so know what is in need of being hedged. Step 3 is create that hedge. And step 4 is, of course, very important, manage that position. Don't just set it and forget it. A lot of times, if you have a lot of risks on the line, may need a little bit more babysitting. You may feel like it's going to be a lot of work, but typically that hedge and that management pays you, at least reduces your risks on the outside. So we can start one at a time, but yeah, that's going to be the 4 steps. Whether, again, it's Uniswap, but at the end of the day, understand what you're trading, understand the where the exposure is, create the hedge that neutralizes that exposure, and also manage it. So going back to the first step, which is understand the value of your own Uniswap position. I'll share the screen. A lot of what you'll see is going to be on the main interface of the Panoptic interface. And maybe let's start. Let's start here. We've done some tutorial with Helen Keller, the account that Izzy was trading we have some panoptic positions. So we won't go into that region. But if you were to go on the panoptic interface, connect your wallet, and if your wallet has Uniswap LP tokens, they would show now on the main interface down here. And you can show the closed position. So these are positions that have been migrated out of Uniswap into Panoptic. But some positions we decided to keep open. And these are the two that have some liquidity inside. There's a ETH Uni pair and a CowSwap ETH pair as well. And they would be a bit different than what you have in the Panoptic interface. But when we talk about understand the value of your LP position, we try to make it simple. So when you click on that, it will bring you to the positions dashboard. And this is kind of how we first communicate what the value of your LP position is. Here, and this is the key point, all Uniswap positions, whether it's ETH Uni, ETH USDC, even stablecoin, you have to keep one asset, one token as the risky asset and one token as the quote or the numeraire asset. If you have ETH and Uni as a pair, it's actually very complicated to think about the cash value of Uni, the cash value of ETH. It's adding a little bit more kind of unnecessary steps. What we show here is that if you have a ETH denominated pair, ETH Uni, ETH Cow, ETH Pepe, ETH is a stable asset. It's the numeraire of choice. ETH is money, I guess, and this is what you say as has the quote value, and the other one is Uni. So if we say ETH is the base asset, Uni is the risky asset. In a Uniswap position, you have a range from 0.02, 0.04. If the price is above your range, now you're 100% in that quote asset. And here it would be 100% ETH. So if the price of Uni in that pool would go up, you would go to be 100% ETH. The ETH value is your quote asset, doesn't change, so it's flat. If the price were to go down and now you're exposed to Uni, now you have a straight line here, meaning that your LP position will be 100% composed of Uni tokens. And if the price goes up by $1, you also get up by $1. So that transition between being fully in ETH versus fully in Uni creates this payoff, as simple as it is. And if you think about impermanent loss, or if you think about different ways to enter into a position, unless you have this framing in mind, which is above the range, you're flat and no risk. Below the range, maybe you have all the risk, or at least you're exposed. This is going to help you set up that hedge. Unless you have this payoff, you might be hedging the wrong thing, getting the wrong quantities, or creating something that is not necessarily hedgeable the way that we think about it.
Well, this is a very important step because the first step here is understand the value of your LP position. And I think a lot of people might not understand that this is the value of your Uniswap position. I think a lot of people get confused and think it's more like a straddle where both ends point down, or that it's just it doesn't look like this. So please clarify why do we see a put option kind of like payoff and not like a straddle where most people thinking in terms of a permanent loss would believe.
Yeah, and it's because again, unless you set up and look at the math and set up the position and look at the value, then yeah, you may be creating something that's not the real value. It's not hedgeable. Again, a lot of my own research on Uniswap V3 was because I needed to know whether I made money, but also how much taxes do I owe on this amount. And I plugged in the impermanent loss formula, and it gave a nonsensical result. I said, okay, I may even be the Uni ETH token. This is what impermanent loss tells me. I earn fees. The impermanent loss is this, and if you put this number in, it's going to give you one answer. But if you look at the bookkeeping, all the steps of all the token transfers, it's not going to be impermanent loss straddle two sides being at risk, but rather that exact same payoff. So again, this is ETH on the upside. So you still have some a somewhat complex payoff if you were to say, no, this is not ETH, but rather USDC. But because we frame it, you have ETH and Uni. ETH is a unit of choice, and you do this with all your Uni pairs. Then you have a global Uni exposure, a global altcoin exposure if you want, and now you hedge maybe that whole portfolio with the ETH USDC. But no, in this case, it's really that it's under construction. If it's above the price, it's 100% ETH, and there's no extra loss or extra gain to be made. You're in ETH. Uni prices goes up, you're not exposed. That's why it's flat there. And vice versa. If it's below, you have only US uni. If the uni price goes down, you have all of that exposure. So it's a put, and we know because it's a panoptic position, but it's could be called a covered call, could be called setting a put, but that payoff is what you have to deal with, what you have to hedge.
Thanks for clarifying. Yes, so it sounds like a very important kind of underlying assumption here is that ETH is the denominated quote asset, as you mentioned many times, and that's how we can graph out this payoff.
Yes, and also let me bring another position that has USDC as the numeraire, if you want. So ETH plays this special role in most pairs in Uniswap. You see Uni ETH, Pepe ETH, could be like a new token like Eigen is paired with ETH. You don't see it typically getting launched on USDC. It is what it is. I guess people have a lot of ETH to spare, so that's why they LP with it, I guess, as opposed to USDC. So that when we have this type of position, we always default to ETH being the numeraire of choice. And now I'm spying on a different position. This position is in the ETH USDC pool, 30 bips. It has the same payoff. And the key point is that now, because it has USDC as the pair inside, if the price goes up, you're 100% USDC and you have a flat payoff. If the price goes down, now you have a 100% ETH exposure. And now this one special pool, ETH USDC, ETH DAI, if you want, ETH USDT, we show the payoff as being the stablecoin as the numeraire as opposed to ETH, because it now it's a the unit of choice being USDC is a little bit harder to grok, I guess, as an LP.
Yeah, this makes sense. That I think a lot of people think in USD terms. So for this pair, USDC, the stable coin as the quote asset or numeraire, as you call it in, is that French? I don't know.
It's a quant. It's a quant term for quote. A lot of French quants exist, and then they've been kind of very active in a weird way. And I don't know if numeraire had a meaning before, but yeah, it's how it's used in the quant world.
Great, thanks for clarifying. So, yeah, we have the payoff charts. I think
Yep.
we now understand that this looks very much like a put option. It's kind of flat as the price goes up. It's has a slope of -1 as the price goes down, and in between is kind of a smooth connection. If you're curious about the actual mathematical formulas here, I think there's a lot. If you Google Guillaume Lambert medium, that's what I always do to find your articles.
Yeah, no,
Understanding the value of your V3 position. That's very interesting. Goes into the math of all this. We're kind of
I know this is like a 2021 article, I guess. Yeah, I've been parroting the same thing, but this is kind of the core issue. Whether you're hedging your crops or oil or Uniswap positions or a basket of options, you just have to understand what the payoff looks like. And again, even that's kind of the simplest, most straightforward starting point. This is what you have as an instrument. This is what you have to hedge. And let's actually go. We are kind of able to spy a little bit on these accounts. This is the 7 siblings. I don't know if you know about this, but this position has a lot of Uniswap positions: DAI ETH, Sky ETH, Uni ETH. So we can go through all of them and kind of recreate that position. Let me see if maybe the DAI one, if it's a bit wider, it's easier to see. But yeah, anyways, we can go to a different one. These positions are huge. It's like notional value. It's like 1.8 million. But all of these have a payoff that's clear. And actually, let's use this one as a way to hedge. But yes, first step, understand whether you go through the Panoptic interface and load your position, you'll see it right away. Or you do some math or you plot in Python to see the same chart. But this is kind of the first step. Understand that this is the payoff that you have to hedge. Step 2, and then know your delta exposure. And delta, it's a Greek. We won't even go into the mathematical definition, But delta is the first thing you have to hedge. This is the almost a measure of risk, but that tells you the underlying, which is in this case the price in that DAI ETH pool, underlying is going to change. How does that impact my payoff? How does that impact how much money I make or lose? So here, when you see this chart, um, we know this is yeah, and then yeah. First thing first, when you talk about delta, it is actually the slope of that curve at the current price, right? So you have, in this case, current price is 2,500. The range is between 2,400 and 3,000. And then there might be a lot of things going on, but the slope is what is your delta. And if you look here, we do show the slope in the tooltip. It shows 580 or 570 ETH. This is how much exposure you have at this price because you have kind of an LP position. And then on that chart, it shows 570 ETH. We also show it here on that legs table, 572 exactly at the current price. So this position, which controls $1.9 million worth of funds, part of it is in ETH, part of it is in DAI, stablecoin. It does a very weird and kind of nonlinear payoff curve. But the key quantity you want to know is that at the current price, the delta is shown as being 572 ETH. If the price were to move all the way here, the delta will be zero. So this is a different number, of course, than 570, which is a lot of money. But you go from zero on top here, and now it's 50 ETH, 200 ETH, 250, and all the way down here is 700 ETH. You go from being zero exposure, meaning zero risk, you're not influenced by the price move, to being 100% exposure, 100% risk, where you started with some DAI, some ETH. Now, if the price were to go down, you're 100% ETH, your delta is going to be 100%, or in that case, it's going to be 700. And we do show it also in percent form, but yes, the slope, the risk, how much does a move in the online impacts your PNL is the delta. This is what this thing you have to neutralize.
Great. So just to clarify for LPs learning this word delta for the first time, so you said it's the slope of the payoff graph. So if we were to interpret that, that means on the far right side, if the price goes up and it's flat, the delta is now zero. So this is that very popular term, delta neutral, right? Which means if the price changes up there in that region, nothing will happen. You won't make money. You're not losing money. Just nothing happens. Whereas when the price massively collapses on the left side and your position is completely in ETH, your delta there is in percent terms is negative 100, I guess, negative 100%, which means as the price drops, you're losing that full amount of the drop. And then anywhere in between that, where the delta is 82% or 50% or somewhere between 0 and 100, it means that you're as the price drops, you lose money, but you don't lose like 100% of that price drop. You just lose a part of the price drop. Is that how you would kind of interpret it?
Exactly. So the again, delta is a measure of risk. You typically want to get fees in Uniswap. This is constant. This is you do nothing, you earn fees. But the big worry, the impermanent loss kind of part, which is, yes, I earn fees, but if the price does move the wrong way, am I getting stuck with an asset that loses money 1-to-1, 50%, 10%? This is the part that is extremely important. And when we want to hedge something, we want to neutralize that risk, which is now currently it's 82%, meaning that each price move of $1 means you lose, or you may gain or lose 82 cents. Normally, if you want to hedge, you want to bring this to zero or as close as possible to zero. And you don't do this by kind of wanting to be in that range. You do this by adding either a position, a hedge that would kind of shift the payoff. And is this step 3? But yes, beyond understanding the risks, beyond understanding what is making you money and how much you make or lose, the next step is, given that information, can you create the proper hedge? And here on the interface, we show the Uniswap position. This is the Uniswap NFT that lives in Uniswap. But we can go and hit the trade button here, and it's going to bring us to the exact same position with the exact same parameters, but on the Panoptic interface. And if you remember, the range was between 2401 and 3000, still the same range. So now we have same payoff, but we could interact with it, and this is what we'll do. We'll add legs, we'll try to neutralize that slope to be as small as possible. And we'll make it a bit easier in the future with the position builder, but for now, we'll just have to use the trading interface. And remember, we have this position to hedge, so we load it on the trading page. We'll add legs, maybe we'll do stuff, and then if we were to mint or hedge, you would have to kind of remove it. But that's not the story. So like before, we see the payoff, and I'll do it in one contract, so it's a bit easier. But like before, we have this delta of 0.82 on the tooltip, same as before. And now it's time to create a hedge. There's a few ways to create a delta neutral payoff, and I'll go through a couple of them. But yes, this is the payoff you want to hedge. A lot of risk, especially on the downside, no risk on the upside. One not the best way, but one simple way to hedge that risk is to try to neutralize the delta by you start with a put. Setting a put, you can sell a call at the same time. Oh my god. Actually, let me go there. Maybe okay. We'll go back here. We'll change this to a monthly. Is it close or weekly? Yeah, this is actually not too far off. So we have this position, which was between 2400 and 3000. This is the same payoff as before. The delta is about 1. So yeah, sorry about that. It's a bit not exactly the same one, but the UI crash. So this is the position that you're creating. You're trying to hedge. You have this payoff, this range. As I said, one of the simplest way is to sell a call to neutralize that delta. So on Panoptic, you can hedge and you can drag this around. So what happens if you sell a call? So the put was just flat on the top. The call adds risk to the downside here. If the price were to shoot way, way up, you have more risk. That might seem like a counterintuitive hedge, but you can never get rid of the risks. There's always some risks. You want to get rid of it locally and push it maybe to the sidelines and push it away from the current price. What I mean by that is that currently you're 80% exposed to the price of ETH, which might not be what you want. What you can do is that you can bring that call so that we try to make that payoff as flat as possible. So that is now creating a flat payoff, and the delta is now 0. The trade-off, if you want, you still have risks on the downside as before, but now the slope picks up at a much lower price, 2000 instead of 2400. And you add risks to the upside. And now if the price were to go above 3000 or 3000, then you have some risk. So it might seem weird you're adding risks on the other side, whereas it was safe. But the key point is that you're making it neutral locally. And we can look at the slope. But before we were losing $1, 80 cents for every dollar move. Now the delta is 0. But if the price were to go $100 up or $100 down, we don't gain or lose $80, but we gain or lose something like $10. So you from 60 to 50s, yeah. So you are offsetting the risks because now you don't have 80% move, but you have something that's very, very minimal, and you don't have as much risk. So yeah, maybe let me stop. Does it make sense?
Yeah, this is really cool. I want to clarify another detail here. We have the words put and call here, which are probably new to a lot of LPs. So the word put here is just because the payoff of an LP position just happens to look like selling a put there. And the word call is because when you have a bearish LP position, it just happens to look like selling a call. So the way I think about this is that if you have a normal LP position, it is slightly bullish. and then you add in a bearish LP position, they kind of cancel out each other. So you have a bullish position, a bearish position. In the middle there, they're kind of flat. And the way that you find that middle point where it is flat with a delta of 0 is you just slide that, you drag it along until it looks like if there's a ball that's rolling down a hill almost, the ball is sitting at the current price, where will it stay flat? Where is it going to just sit there for the time being? And because the LP position started, a little bit towards the upper side, so like it was mostly higher than the price with its price range. The call that you're selling or the bearish LP position has to be a little bit lower than the LP price, and that kind of balances out so that you get the 0 delta in the middle.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can drag around. You can say, hey, I'm going to go all the way out here, and then I have like no risk on the downside, but now you transform that payoff and you have more risk on the upside. So yeah, the dance is to find, as Brendan said, what looks like, if it's a hill, where would the ball roll? You want it to be stable, and that means that a small price move will not impact your PNL at all, but practically. So but yeah, so this is one way. You neutralize your delta, you make it flat. Yes, you add risk on both sides, but this is a trade-off. Nothing is free. The main advantage is that now you transfer something that is very directional with positive deltas with something that is non-directional, that's hedged. You can hedge in a different way to have a little bit more positive, and bullish maybe outcome, or bearish. But if you truly want to be neutral, one way is to have call that offsets that payoff. And so this is one way. Let me go to a different way, which is a different type of hedge. But yes, this is one way. You have a put that exists. You set a call against it to hedge and neutralize the payoff. Now this goes away. The other side, the other way to hedge is maybe you're fine being bullish. Maybe, yes, I do think that the price of ETH is going to go up. I don't want to be neutral. I want to be taking advantage of that price move. Another way to hedge is to not decrease risks to 0, but actually reduce it by quite a bit. And if you look at this payoff, green is good. So there's all green here, no risk on the upside. And this is fine. You're bullish. You think it's going to go up. So you have no risk on the upside. You want to keep this. But the scary part is the downside. You have maybe a lot of downside risks here. If the price were to go magically back to 1,500, you would lose. That position was $2 million. You would lose quite a bit. So another way to hedge is to buy a put option. And this one, you don't even necessarily have to worry about the payoff. Again, you can drag it around. You don't want to worry about the payoff, but rather you want to cap your max losses. So this is initially, LP positions are directional. If you want to maintain that directionality, it's fine if it's going up, and you're right. So there's nothing to worry about. But the key point is that you want to protect or hedge being wrong. No one is right 100% of the time. Buying a put option will cap your max losses, and instead of losing 50% if the price goes down 50% or more, you lose only 10% or 5%, and you can make it very, very small. I wouldn't recommend doing this, but you can have almost like binary option. You have limited upside, limited downside, but you know exactly the risks: max win, max loss, and then you can use it. So that's another way to hedge, is to not necessarily reduce your deltas, but reduce your risk. And in that case, you get rid of the risk. You don't put any more risk on. The call made it two-sided, being risky. Now it's gone. The trade-off that you pay for that. There, when you added a call, you got more revenues because you were selling more options. Here, you get rid of the risk. Nothing is free. You pay for it by buying an option.
Great. So it looks like out on the far ends, what we call the wings, maybe when the price drops a lot, if the ball rolls down the hill, it kind of stops at a certain point where you're seeing this defined loss, which is nice. What about at the local area where closer to the current price? What happens when you add on this hedge? Does it dampen your losses as well near the current price?
It depends how you want to set it up. Currently, the range of that, it's still an LP position. You kind of borrow it. The range is going to be only active, again, same price here, 1,800 to 2,300. It doesn't overlap with the current price, so it has zero impact basically on the current payoff. So if I were to get rid of this, and it might be hard, that chunk will not move at all. Oh, wait, this. Yeah, the key point is that this is going to be exactly the same payoff if it's in range, but you can buy protection that is only active when it's out of range, and that will only protect if you need it and not affect the position if you're bullish and it does go up.
Great. So this is a hedge in case the price drops further. You're hoping the price will go up, and so that's why you're keeping this bullish position, an LP position. But in the case that it doesn't, you are protected. And so, are you earning LP fees here? Are you paying them? How does the funding rate work for these perp options?
Yeah, so this is the initial Uniswap position. This one will always keep earning fees when it's in range between 2,400 and 3,000. Nothing changes here. This position that you buy, again, you have to buy a position that exists. You cannot buy kind of if no one has sold, but if you were able to buy this option, you only pay it when the price is in that range too. So it's a funny way of pricing an option, but it's only you only pay for it when it's in range, and there's trades that happen. If the current setup means that it's out of range, you pay 0 for it. So the trade-off means that you pay nothing for that protection. It might seem too good to be true. Maybe the trade-off is that maybe no one wants to sell you something for free, and you won't have as much liquidity. And that maybe is the more likely scenario is you maybe have to be in range a little bit, meaning that you have some overlap in the middle. And here you pay when it's in range here, you get paid when it's in range here, and now you may have more liquidity close you are to being in range to do money. But yeah, that's another way to see. This will affect the payoff a little bit. This will affect your payout if it's in that put option range. When it's outside, it's exactly like before with the Uniswap position.
Okay, so yeah, it looks like the fees kind of cancel out when the two positions overlap almost.
Yeah, if you buy $1 million worth of puts, you may be paying a bit more than Uniswap fees because the liquidity will be small, but reduced. But if you have a 0 to 5 ETH position to hedge, you could probably find something that you can buy quite cheaply.
So it gets more expensive the less liquidity is being sold for you to purchase.
Yeah, exactly. So first hedge was to get rid of the directional bias and be totally neutral. You just go on the sell call, you move this around till you find something that looks flat. This is one hedge. Now, this is getting paid on the call, getting paid on the put. This will increase the amount of fees you collect. So this is a win-win in a way, but the trade-off that you have to risk on both sides. The other way is to get rid of the risk altogether by paying a fee. This is when you buy an option and you have kind of this type of payoff. Here, it's starting from the assumption that LPs know it's a bullish trade. This you want to be bullish, you can protect your downside. That's the second way. I'll touch upon the third way, which is a bit more advanced, but still a bit visually enticing, is that, yes, you can buy an option, and then you can drag it around. You can do any cool thing with the payoff. But one thing you can do as well is that you can buy a longer dated option or a wider option. So we have on the interface the sizing, the time scale, the legs. But here you have the existing ones, and I can change this one. Instead of being a weekly option, like the weekly option that was sold, you can now buy a monthly option or even yearly. I'll do a weird thing, but you buy a very, very wide option. And then it could be at the same strike. Oh yeah, the payoff crapping out. Let me do. You can
And
set it
just
up here.
to clarify,
Yeah.
the weekly options, this is just our option speak for LP width. So the weekly options are about 12.5% wide, meaning 12% above the current price, 12.5% below the current price. Whereas this yearly one is going to be like 112% or something like that, above and below. So much wider of a range.
Exactly. So in this case, it's a mix of both. What you want to do is to neutralize your delta, and maybe this is kind of. Let me see the ball rolling. This is where it may look weird, but here, if you want to be delta neutral, you can still create that payoff that is kind of flat. And or if you still want to maintain some delta, you can change it. But now the whole thing will be at a much lower delta. We were at 80% before, now we're at 36. Depending on how you frame it, you can be much lower. So this is a slightly different hedge, but you create a protection on both sides. Before we had a call that had a lot of risks on both sides, uncapped, very scary. Now you buy a wider one and you have what looks like a mix of both. You have no risk on either side, it's capped, and technically you're still earning quite a bit of fees, but you're changing your delta and be neutral. And this one is also maybe a slightly different approach, but this is also a way to create a defined risk strategy that is still paying you net. In the other case, you would be paying a lot if the price goes down. Here, the way this is constructed, you get paid most of the time when it's in range. So that's a slightly different trade. If you want to set it up, it's on the strategies here. It's called a calendar spread. So this is a tiny bit more advanced, but I just want to show you most traders, most quants probably use any one of those three ways to hedge. Static delta, creating a delta neutral by adding a call, capping your risk by buying a put, or buying a wider one to create what looks like no risk on both sides. You pay less because it's wider, but you have kind of this the fees in the middle.
So yeah, this is a really interesting point. So this can be a delta neutral position like we saw earlier, except that the wings, so the far out parts, are capped off. So the ball rolls up or down, it's going to stop. Unlike the first hedge you showed us, where if the ball kept rolling, it would roll faster and faster, forever and ever.
And
Almost.
crush your portfolio. Yeah, exactly.
So that makes this third hedge very, very interesting. But the trade-off, it sounds like, between the first and the third one is in the third hedge, you're paying a little bit more for the hedge, but you're not paying as much as the second hedge. So it's almost like the third hedge is kind of this happy medium between the first and second one that you showed us.
Yep, exactly. So there's a still risky but delta neutral hedge. You have a let's get rid of the risk altogether and buy and pay. And this one, as you mentioned, is a mix of both. You have zero risk on the delta. You have a little bit of premium you have to pay, but it's capping your risk on both sides. And yes, I would say that if you start from a Uniswap position, buying a wider one is an interesting hedge as well. That is, as I said, mix of both. Cap risk, delta neutral, pay a little bit, but still make money.
Cool.
So that's, but I forget what the fourth one. Yeah, okay. So you start with a Uniswap position, you hedge it. And now we'll do kind of a funny trade, but let's assume that this is the position you have. You create a call option that is now creating some type of payoff. And you start at this point, you're happy with the hedge, no delta exposure. It's pretty flat. You can walk away for a day or two and not see the capital change too much and see just more fees being accumulated. Last step is hedges are temporary, or at least they need to be nurtured. You cannot just go away forever. You need to manage the risks. You can do this dynamically, or you can do this every once in a while. It could be every few hours if you want to be on top of it, or it could be every day, few days, depending on your position. But the last and maybe more important point is no hedge is perfect. You have to manage this, and it's going to require you to pay attention to some extent, because what starts as neutral could still be quite risky in the long run. So
this is all about that localized, where you were only hedging locally, at the wings or further out. It's not necessarily a flat hill. So if the price moves, now you're on a different part of the hill, and you might not be flat anymore, you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll do the management for this straddle light, which is unlimited risks on both sides. The other ones have capped risk. So even if you go on vacation, leave for many days, you aren't necessarily at a high risk. You can lose an amount that's fixed or defined, but it's not as crucial to manage. This position that we're creating, and we're adding risk on both sides, it's actually very, very adding an additional layer of complexity. And this is the one that does need a lot more nurturing. Again, in the world of traditional options, if it's defined risk, typically you don't even manage it. You set it up and wait till it expires, similar to here. But now this is undefined. This is highly risky on both sides. How do you manage this if the price goes way, way up? When the price goes way down? And this is kind of the part we'll talk about. So let's say this is the position that you started with. This is your Uniswap position. This is your hedge. Both lives in Uniswap and Panoptic. This is fine. But now I'm gonna try to simulate the price moving. But I'll move the position either ways, and that's gonna tell us what to do. So let's say the price were to go up, and it shoots up to 3,000. So now it's 2,500. Shoots up to 3,000. How do you react? So I'm gonna, instead of moving the price up 500, I'm gonna move the strikes down 500. So I'm moving this one to 1,800, this one to 2,100. So here you might be out of range, meaning that the price was at 2,000, shot up 500. This is maybe the less optimal position sizing you have. In theory, your put is fully in USDC or DAI. You have no risk, but because you added that call, you're short ETH, you're short one delta. You are effectively kind of losing more money as the price goes up. You're short. So the best way to hedge this is in terms of like real options. One thing you can do is to close your Uniswap position and redeploy it in range, right? You can actually now again drag this one. I close this. I made money. It's in that flat part. It's a successful trade. Let's redeploy and now manage the risks. In that case, you can change where you want to be a bit more delta neutral if you want. You can be a bit more aggressively short, but if it's not your assumption, but you would normally try to redeploy that put to be closer to a manageable strike. And if you're neutral and you still think it's going to move back, you can just leave it like that, meaning that you have this call, which may still work, this put, which may still work. Your overall delta is much smaller than being -1, but you're not necessarily kind of beholden to close this position. You can still say, no, I do think the price is going to go back down, and then I can keep it. So this process is called rolling the untested leg. You have a put and a call. The put was successful because the price moved up. It's not tested in a way. The call is the one tested, so you roll the put up to neutralize your delta again. It might be hard to get to zero delta, but you can have something that looks like this, where it's mostly 35%, and that's kind of the first thing to do. Roll up the untested leg. In that case, close that Uniswap position, recenter it. You have no risk on the downside. It's kind of flat-ish in that part, so that still works for you. And that still assumes you're somewhat neutral in your position. You don't think the price is going to move much, so you go from earning zero fees to earning some fees and have some directional exposure still.
Sweet. This is really good. I've been typing up a summary table to kind of describe the 3 different approaches that I can share.
Yeah, perfect. and so this is one way, and I would say that the way to manage a single Uniswap position is like I described. You have one position, you have one hedge. The position gets tested. Typically, the hedge is meant to bring everything delta neutral, so you should still be confident in that delta neutrality and can move it. You could even say, I'm going to close everything and redeploy a new position that's fully delta neutral. This is also good. You may have to close the position, maybe pay some commission fee when you redeploy. That is kind of another venue, but that's another way to say, all right, this position, which again, let's try. It was a little bit like this, where it was kind of exposed. Maybe you earn enough fees so that you don't lose, but if it does, you can say, okay, I'm going to close this, redeploy, recenter my straddle to be fully in range. And instead of just moving one leg, which is the untested one, you move both legs. You are that requires you to be a bit more active, but now you're resetting the stage for being one, delta neutral, but also centered around the current price, so you earn more fees. That hedge, as I mentioned earlier, is there for a reason, and if the price moves against, it doesn't mean the hedge is bad. It still serves the purpose, and you may not want to kind of double down, but that's one then you just roll on a leg. If you're okay with rolling both, next one would just to be redeploy fully delta neutral, rechange both legs, put this in calls, and have this be your new position.
And at this point, yeah, you're doing almost like options market making. It seems like you're neutralizing your delta as it moves. You're hoping you earn more LP fees than you do from losing from the price moving. The price moving is dampened though because of the way you've set this up. So you're going to lose less by a lot than what you would lose compared to normal LP position. So very, very interesting here on how to manage this position. The others don't need as much management, you're saying, because they're defined risk, right?
Yeah, exactly. The if you know what the max loss is, you should be comfortable with that being what happens. And then the accounting in the panoptic side will kind of make sure you don't lose more and you have collateral set aside for this. So this is fine. But yes, if it's an undefined risk, as you say, almost like an options market maker, then you have to be a bit more active to change. So that's again maybe the second way to manage your position. First one is to try to move one leg, which is the Uniswap leg, to be in range. Second one is to move both legs, burn everything, recenter, and create a new position. Remember, if it's a Uniswap position, you can still burn and recenter, but it's a positive delta. So you are always kind of having to swap in and out of the two tokens. If you're delta neutral, there's no swapping involved. You just borrow some DAI, borrow some ETH, and move it into the account with no swapping. It's a weird thing where a lot of rebalancing cost comes from swapping, selling or buying the wrong asset at the wrong time. But now here it's no capital delta, if you want. It's all the same coming in and out. It's just now centered. That's another way. Last one, which is what happens most of the time with me, at least when I'm trading, is that maybe you're wrong, but not too much, right? You started delta neutral, and maybe let's make it a bit more spicy. You started delta neutral, price moved. Instead of being delta of 0, yeah, this is delta of let's say 50, 60. Yeah, instead of being 0 delta, you're back to something that made me a bit uncomfortable, 45 delta. So you want to be flat. You're still in range. It moved a little bit, but you're maybe not comfortable with seeing some sloping here. And that's perfectly fine. We want it to be 0. Now it's 40%. If it moves, it can be 80%. You're still earning fees. So it's not something that you have to manage right away because you're getting paid, but maybe the exposure is not what you want. You want to be neutral. You don't want to have anything kind of adding to the risk. So that is when you think at the portfolio level. You have a Uniswap position, you have a hedge. You can hedge the two combined together and create a new position, maybe, or create a new leg that will now neutralize this. So here we have negative 0.4 del ETH of exposure. If you want to neutralize this to 0, you just have to add 0.4 or 40.4 ETH of positive delta, and that should combine it. So one way to do this is to sell another option, sell a put option. And we still have these two legs that exist, but now with this new option, you can drag it around and also try to replicate that flat-ish payoff. And then maybe, and depending on where you stand, you have maybe more delta, less delta. You don't want to be all on top, but in that case, you would be maybe here. You had two legs, price moved, you sell another one to restore your deltas to be 0. You still have risk on both sides. You don't want to do this so that you have like adding risk on top of risks. That's why when you have a portfolio, you want to have some of it as cash or some of it as a way to kind of hedge your risk. But creating a new option to hedge the rest of your portfolio is also how you can think even more like a market maker. You don't have one position, like 25 positions you have to hedge. You have one basket of options. And if each position is 5% of your portfolio, you can add one or two positions that also are 5% and can restore the balance. So the goal is to have these two positions be 10% of your portfolio, so that when you add an extra leg, you also use up 10%, but you now have 50% more fees. You have more fees collected because you have an extra leg. So this is when you have maybe now a portfolio level understanding of your risks one or two hedges can now neutralize 5 or 10 extra legs if you want 5 extra positions in one go.
So every time you add a new position to hedge, so this method where you're not deleting your old position, you're just adding on top of it. You're saying you also earn more fees each time because now you have more and more short positions.
Exactly. And the yes, exactly. This is a new position that has a range. It's going to earn Uniswap fees if it's in range. These two have a different one, but now we have 1, 2, 3 short positions that are like three LP positions that are earning fees. So that's you get paid a little bit by adding more risk, but then you hedge, so you reduce risk. You get paid. You put more risk on one side if you want, in a way. But that's kind of the
Yeah, can you zoom out here? And I
yes.
want to see the risk that was added here.
Yeah, let
Um,
me. The slope now is twice as bad on the downside than the upside, like a bit slanted. That one leg adds 1 ETH more risk if the price goes down. So the price went up, you add more risk to the downside. So I don't know if it's a
so
reallocating risk to where the
can
price is
we
not. Yeah,
can we add a put op? So we added a put option. Can we also add a call option and move them to the right a little bit? So we have basically two straddles, both with a
yeah.
negative
So
point
this
four.
is also so you can look. We can put this wherever we want, and then we can add a new leg. So this is maybe getting busy on that one page, but technically you can have two positions. But yes, let's say we have two extra positions, two extra legs. I mean, that are also delta neutral nature, but a bit offset. It does bring the deltas closer. Now you have four legs in range. If the price moves, you add more risk to the upside now. Though both rates. So this is doubling down a little bit. I don't know if you know about Texas hedging.
Does this have to do with Texas Hold'em poker or something?
No, it's I don't know where it comes from, but like if you're wrong, you just double down. This is Texas. You don't try to neutralize your delta, you double down. This is not quite there, but you add more risk on both sides. The gain is that you have more fees being generated. Each one of these legs on their own have a complex payoff, complex risk. All together, they combine something that is flat. And this is maybe what you want to do. So back to to what you said about being a market maker. This is what market makers do. They have dozens of positions. Each one of them have risks, could be in range, out of range, but the whole portfolio now has a global risk, global delta to hedge, global, and maybe if we go back to that step, we still have the same thing. You still have to understand the risks, the value of a position, understand the delta, find a proper hedge, and manage it. But you don't do this for a single position, but you do it for a whole portfolio. So this is a bit more advanced. It's not meant to kind of overwhelm you, but this is how to some extent market makers are also successful. They don't have a one position, one hedge mindset. They have 10 positions, one hedge. Same hedging headaches, but much simpler to manage. You have one hedge as opposed to 25 ones.
Yes, that's right. Well, if it's okay, I want to share a quick little summary to
Of
compare
course,
the
yeah,
three.
and yeah, we're at the end. So again, this is um, a bit on the advanced side for the last part, but this is just how you should think about hedging. Understand the value, understand the risks, create a proper hedge, manage the risks. Maybe we'll make a slogan out of it. But yeah,
Wonderful. No, I like the kind of the more advanced strategies for those who want to try experiment a little bit more. We have a trading competition going on right now on base in the CBBTC market. This would be a great place to practice and get reimbursed potentially for your all your practice. But here is a quick summary of the basic kind of strategies here, and you can correct anything here as that I got wrong here. But we had three hedges that we showed in this video.
I think we see your screen though.
Oh, yes. Let's see. Sorry. Let's hit share again. Can you see this?
Oh, it disappeared. No.
Let me try sharing my entire screen then. How about this?
Yes, everything's here. Oh, there we go. A notepad. I like it.
Yes. This is the OG terminal, I guess, for Word. So yeah, we showed three hedges here, and each hedge was a different way of hedging your Uniswap LP position. And so in the first one, you sold a call. In the second one, you bought a put. and in the last one you bought a put that was a wider price range. So we call these positions, when you combine the Uniswap LP position with the hedge in options lingo, the first one is called a strangle. The second one is a spread or vertical spread, and the third one, sorry, no, I don't think it's a calendar, is it?
Oh yeah, it's a calendar spread. Yeah.
Okay, calendar spread for that third one. And so as far as risk goes, the first one is undefined, so the most risky. The ball can keep rolling forever. The second and third hedges, though, were defined risk, where they were a little bit flat on the ends. And that means that you can go on vacation for the second and third hedge and come back. But for the first hedge, you need to actively manage it pretty well. As the delta moves, you need to sell more options or close out your original options and move them, as Guillaume showed us. The overall cost of these hedges is going to be the cheapest for hedge number one. In fact, you get paid more. You get
It's
paid
negative cost.
yes. So great payment, but you're suffering more risk potentially on the outside. Every time you add an option, you're getting paid another multiple more of Uniswap fees. Whereas the second hedge is the most expensive because you're buying an option rather than selling it. So you pay, and that kind of cancels out a lot of the fees that you're going to be earning. So at that point, you're a little bit more directional. You're more bullish. You're hoping the price will go up, and then you're protected on the downside if the price goes down. But you got to pay for that. The last strategy that we showed was kind of some in between strategy where the cost is somewhere in between hedge number one and hedge number two. So good kind of happy medium here. Do you have anything to add to summarize and help you our viewers remember the three hedges you showed here, or any bigger principles you want them to take away?
Yeah, no, I think this is very comprehensive. There is unfortunately not one recipe that works for everyone, but I would say that the last two rows is where your decision kind of making process should start. Do you want to be active or passive? And it's fine either ways. And do you want to do a cheap hedge that kind of pays you, or one that you pay for? And again, being passive, you pay. Being active, you get paid. And the level of activity or passiveness can kind of changes it. But yes, the knowing that this exists, knowing that there's to some extent, it's there might be two or three, there might 3 or 4 total ways to hedge. You have to know them, but it's not going much further beyond that. So unless, as long as you understand there's a little bit of variety in the strategies, they all have their trade-offs. But it's like any new skill. You just have to know about them. And once you know, it's going to come a bit more naturally what you want to do. But yeah, the tutorial 101 step is to understand how to do it, what are the ways to do it, and when you do it, you may say, "Oh no, I prefer to be a bit more passive, or I prefer to be a bit more active." It's all going to be up to you. So, but yeah, it's fine. If you have questions too, or if you have anything that is unclear, we'll be happy to answer. But yeah, that's maybe the very yeah, actually comprehensive overview of the ways to hedge in a Uniswap LP position.
Well, wonderful. We're at the hour here. I think this was a very educational Beyond the Greeks. Catch us every Tuesday where we'll dive into some research. It's always actionable, back-tested, or some concepts like this where we show you how to actually implement this research. So very useful, practical research we're doing here at Panoptic every Tuesday morning, I guess, or noontime in the East Coast. And then tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll have our live stream with option hours in the morning, Eastern time again, and Friday as well. So we'll cover the best and worst trades going on in the trading competition on base. So it's not too late to join. We're only halfway in. Try out some of these strategies if you want to practice your hedges. You can you might not be like bring in your LP position, but you can set up an LP position in Panoptic and then hedge it in Panoptic as well, and try to see what you can do as the price moves, for example. Nothing we say here is financial advice. Please do your own research as always, but very, very educational. Thank you, Guillaume. Is there any last words you have before we end the stream?
No, that's it. Thanks a lot. This was great. But yeah, and feel free to ask questions. And otherwise, yeah, see you tomorrow for Brendan, but also, yeah, later for everyone.